What drives you? What motivates you?
I grew up as a competitor. I mean, I'm a team sports player, competition. I like to win. I hate to lose. I love playing with other people. In other words, I love bringing a team together and setting goals that are, hard to attain and going and knocking them down.
I've certainly learned some good things and some bad things, whereas I think if I would have stayed at one place for 25 years, maybe I wouldn't have seen as many different things. And I would say very similar, just being competitive and liking to win and trying to figure out every year how you can do it better and how you can make more money and have more fun at the same time. It's a good trait to have.
I think you would find this across the board with most successful CEOs. There's just a drive and a passion to doing things well and doing them better than anybody else. And that is what always drives and motivates.
But being in Detroit and being part of a blue-collar town and looking at that environment, I was looked as kind of an oddball because I wasn't in the automotive side at all. I went to the service side. Now, this many years later, it doesn't look like such a bad decision, but I did wind up in hospitality, and the common denominator for me is service. Similar to these gentlemen, I think we all thrive on that ability to serve a customer and take that very passionately. And collaborative teams, without teams, you can't do anything.
When you are making decisions, is fear ever a factor? Is there anything you are afraid of?
I don't think fear can enter into the business world. I think you have to be confident. You have to have educated information. I mean, you have to really seek out whether it's data, whether it's anecdotal, whatever it is. You have to have that decision-making opportunity. You have to trust all levels of your company. I get worried when too many decisions roll up to the executive suite. We're so decentralized. I mean, we're close to our clients and customers. So decision-making, you have to trust the team. But I don't think you can have fear. Your people and your clients are looking for you to be confident, not to have fear.
Similar to what you said, at the end of the day, when you have really hard decisions to make, it's very rare that you step back and if you ask, what's just the right thing to do? The right thing for the employees, the right thing for the share owners, what is the right thing to do? Generally, the answer to that question is pretty obvious. Now, pulling the trigger and executing on it is sometimes difficult, not fearful, but it's difficult. And there's apprehension once you pull the trigger about what happens next. But no, I don't think fear is it.
John?
Yeah, I would agree. I think if you were fearful, you would probably make wrong decisions more than you would make right decisions. I don't think that would be a very good emotion to be have that sort of brewing in your head or your heart, so to speak. Like Randall said, I think a piece of it too is, when you do have tough decisions, I'd say 9 times out of 10 the answer is fairly obvious once you go do your homework. It's as much as, once you pull the trigger, the execution part, it's really explaining it to people, because it's amazing to me how people can literally look at an issue that seems crystal clear to one group, and yet another group can come at it from a completely different angle. So trying to get as many people aligned as possible to minimize the collateral damage is a big part of, I think, managing some of those tough ones.
People have asked me, what do you lose sleep over? Which is a different way of looking at that same question. And it's the change you bring in an organization and bring it in a way where people are engaged in the change. When fear sets in an organization goes into gridlock, right? And if people know why you're changing and internalize that and have a chance to voice their point of view on it, they'll move mountains. Even if those mountains create risks for their jobs, they'll go make it happen. It's always been a phenomenally impressive sort of trait of organizations.
How do you go about doing that in these harsh financial times when you have to lay people off, where you have to just give your employees the bad news? How do you break that down, and how do you still keep them motivated?
As long as you're upfront and you've walked them through it, I think a lot of times you assume people aren't maybe as bright, or they're not going to grasp the facts, but I find, the more facts you arm people with, they actually are fairly intelligent and do grasp generally the situation. So I'm just a big believer in, I guess, over-communicate and educate.
But people don't want it done to them, right? So if you engage people in the business issue, I mean, we just merged 2 big companies, 2 big beer companies, and it was clear that there were huge overlaps in the organization. And I would say we lost almost nobody in the transition. which was remarkable. But the team did a great job of engaging the whole company in going through what we should look like, what the job should look like, what the selection process should look like. And it took, you know, as much as we could, it took fear out of the picture and got people engaged in the change.
Perpetual, persistent, non-stop communication. And if you're going to set a course for your organization, your business, I don't care where you are, if you're going to set a course and you want people behind you, there has to be just a relentless communication. And we have a mentality in our company that communication has to communicate to people where they receive their information, and not everybody receives it the same way, the same types of information. And you got to be hitting texting, you got to be face-to-face with people, you got to be doing email, you got to be doing written to some folks, you even drop mail to people's homes. But you have to be relentless at communicating.
Everyone has a different point of reference of how they want to be communicated to. What is, you know, we may think we're communicating the way companies did 10 years ago. That's not enough today. So you really have to cover all bases and over-communicate, but communicate with the business case to the very front line versus just thinking that only 8 or 10 people in a boardroom truly understand it. You know, the real people who understand it are your ambassadors in the front line.
Let's talk about diversity and how important it is to your companies, how it supports your business strategy. Leo.
Yeah, well, I'm a beer guy. Hey, over 50% of the growth will come in Hispanic, markets alone. That's just in the demographics. That's where beer's going to grow. So we have to play, and we have to be successful at that, and we have to mirror, not only our communities and our workforce, but our customers. It's a top-down, bottom-up sort of effort. I mean, if you look at the whole organization, I think of an organization as a big archery target, right on the chest, right? And the bullseye is your customer. And the people who are in the next circle closest to the customer are the people who make, sell, ship your beer. It's not the CEO. The CEO's out here in orbit someplace,
Literally.
But what leadership has to do,
Literally out there.
Yeah, well, here we go. It's the beer business. But what leadership has to do is set the standard, right, and take it seriously.
The only thing I would add to what Leo said is, again, I think when you explain to people that there's a whole business rationale for why you're doing this, as opposed to just it's the socially correct thing to do, I think you get a lot more buy-in within your organization when people understand that it really is helping you move the needle. It's helping you open more restaurants, sell more product, therefore more jobs, better share price, et cetera, is a big thing. And so it sounds like, very much like that. We go after employment, we go after suppliers, we go after franchisees, we go after community, we go after, marketing, every aspect you can think of. We have different inclusion goals. And for us, I think the other thing is it's really as much globally too, because I think everybody talks about inclusion or diversity, and they're really thinking only in the U.S., but if you're really trying to run a global enterprise, I think having people sitting at your table that, actually grew up in Latin America and grew up in Asia. I mean, I always give Coke a lot of credit. You walk into Atlanta and you run into people from, I'd say 80% of their executive team is non-U.S. Ours is probably more like 40, and I'd certainly love to get it more closer to 75.
In 1992, I moved down to Mexico City to work for Carlos Slim, who was our partner for Teléfonos de México. And when I went down there, the wireless business in Mexico was this little nascent business. We had 20,000 subscribers, customers. And we began talking, it's time to begin to grow this business. And I came from the U.S. and we knew how to do wireless in the U.S., right? And it's real simple. You get people who'll spend $70 or $80 a month with you, and you give them a phone and just turn them loose and they'll just use the devil out of it, right? And I'll never forget Carlos Slim saying it's the wrong model, it'll never work in Mexico. And I'm saying, well, you're crazy, you'll never recover your costs. And that was before he was the richest man in the world. I could call him crazy, all right? But he said, no, you have to think about a model where you sell these services for under $20 a month. And then I think you can make 40% margins, right? And you can penetrate the lowest demographics and then the lowest economic strata and create a business. And I will never forget, my reaction. This is impossible. I was 32 years old, I think, at the time, and but off we went. Today, that little company has 200 million subscribers. and it's done quite well. But that has always been a reflection for me to just stop and think about, you can't understand, how to market to various cultural segments if you don't have people who know them intimately, that came from those segments, that came from those demographics. And so for me, as John said, there is just a pure, simple business reason why you need a diverse workforce.
For us, when a company is, or a hospital or a school is looking to hire a company like mine, the diversity and inclusion journey that we've been on, that differentiates, I believe, out of that just cost of our fee in terms of the total value that we can deliver to a client is extremely important. My executive team is heavily involved and they all sponsor on a rotating basis our network groups. They're involved in our mentoring programs. If you're on my executive team, 25% of your bonus is tied to diversity and inclusion targets. That's also, thank you. And in this economic environment, that's also uncoupled. I've uncoupled that from any financial bonus objectives. In other words, it's uncoupled, so that those dollars can't be touched by performance of the company. They're there to be paid out on diversity inclusion objectives, and it's something that we've strived for. And they are tough stretch targets. These are not easy objectives to meet. We continue to raise the bar and drive on our journey. So we call it out in our strategy. I think that starts with the business case, and we've explained it through the business case, and we've actually tried to translate that to our clients and customers every day in terms of our differentiation around diversity and inclusion.
We have a uniquely positive relationship with HACR, which started 25 years ago. And it came for Coors out of a time of struggle. It's a time when we were under close scrutiny in our communities. And in a sense, it's a partnership for initiative in the whole Hispanic area. So it covers governance, covers marketing, covers leadership and talent, procurement, et cetera. And we've over the years developed a process where we lay out these planks and have these goals in these specific areas and partner with HACR leadership to develop the initiatives to make us successful. And certainly board governance has been one of those planks. But that started 25 years ago. John Ortiz, right, was here when we signed the first economic agreement. And today we inked a new one for Miller Coors next door, which is, to me, a wonderful sort of celebration of a partnership that's been very powerful.